Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin B., your host and a child of an all-powerful, perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. Welcome to the continuation of the Saturday Rico 12 meetings. I think this is the third, maybe the fourth week that we've been doing this on Saturdays. So we're getting into a new rhythm and getting different audience members and word out there a little bit more. So this meeting has been held on Fridays for the last 6 years, but we're happy to be in this new time slot. Spread the word. Get your fellowships in here with us. Rico 12 is an open to all addictions and afflictions organization dedicated to exploring the common threads of the differing manifestations of alcoholism, sharing tools and offering hope from those walking a similar path. So whether your thing is alcohol, drugs, sex, gambling, food, whatever, you are home here. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and locations to learn from and support one another. Our speakers come from various fellowships and experiences demonstrating the universal principles of recovery, and we at Rico 12 are not allied or affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. This is Rico 12 speaker meeting number 443. Thank you for joining us live or on the recording later. Today's speaker is Glen K. He's a first-time Rico 12 speaker, and I'm always happy to have new voices with new experience, strength, and hope joining us. He'll be speaking on a topic he is entitled Increasing Our Conscious Contact. I look forward to diving into this conversation here in a few minutes, but first for a few quick announcements. We do offer a variety of recovery resources, including other podcasts, the Big Book Roundtable with David G., Nikki M., and myself, and Noodle It Out with Nikki M., where we just dive through all sorts of recovery-related topics, do roundtable type discussions and back and forths, and it's a lot of fun. Go find those podcasts wherever you listen to podcasts. They're released every week, just like this one is. And if you'd like to get on an email list to learn more about what we're doing here, send me an email at Rico12pod, that's RECO12POD at gmail.com, and we'll get you all connected with everything we got there. All right, Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue this mission. For information on how to do that, I'll put stuff in the chat. It's in the show notes of the podcast if you're listening in the podcast. Thank you so much this week to Margarita and Jade for your generous contributions. Any support, both financially and by word of mouth, truly makes a difference in helping us share these messages of hope and recovery. And just as a little FYI, we started this in June of 2020, and so all of those first costs renew every year. So June is our expensive month where everything comes in, and it costs a little over $1,000 a year to run this project. So if your higher power's nudging you and saying, "Hey, here's $1, here's $10, here's $100," whatever it is, any support is greatly appreciated, especially at this time of year. All right. Each week we receive light and inspiration from our speakers. Their experience brings hope, meaning, worth, and growth to us as listeners. Now I'm going to welcome today's guest speaker, Glen K. Here's a little bit about him. I'm going to read a couple of paragraphs here. Glen Kirby is a teacher, creative producer, recovery advocate, and one of the founders of The Simple Plan. Inspired by the work of counselor and longtime 12-step member Nikki M, The Simple Plan was created to help people simplify recovery, reduce overwhelm, and build practical daily rhythms that support healing and growth. With more than 4 decades in recovery and years spent serving in the inner city ministry, Glen has dedicated his life to helping people move from brokenness toward restoration through faith, mindset shifts, music, meditation, and simple daily practices. He is the author of The Power of Brokenness and currently leads Creative House Studios, where he is developing multilingual music, guided meditation, and recovery resources designed to support emotional healing and spiritual growth. Glen believes that lasting recovery is found one day at a time through simple actions, honest reflection, meaningful connection, and growing a relationship with God and other people seeking freedom. Take it away, Glen. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Justin. And first and foremost, I was at your first meeting last week and really enjoyed Nikki and thought, what an inspiration, to hear the transparency associated with healing, because I think it's one of the things we really have to remember is one of the reasons we're developing a relationship with a higher power is because we have good days, good minutes, bad minutes. We have circumstantial fears that creep into our lives. We get reintroduced to problems from the past. I used to always call it, the long arm of the past, or trying to reach forward to meet us in a brand new way. Those days where you start to say, how long? how long do I have to be clean? How long do I have to be on this pathway before an arm from the past doesn't want to come and grab a hold of me? And I think what's really nice is to listen to people that are really honestly sharing where they're at with regard to the good minutes and the bad minutes and the things that they're searching for and the new revelations that they're finding. And listen, just to reinforce what Nikki was on about, or what reached me last week, which I thought was really cool for her, was that need from a human perspective to keep reaching for things that are still under our control, counselors and meds and circumstances and situations, and enough for rent and a job and all the rest of those things that are natural things. I'm going to call them in the natural, if that makes sense, that are trying to do battle with that shift that we have in our minds about seeking a real higher power relationship. And I wanted to just start out by saying the big thanks to Nikki, because it was really nice to me, but also to jump into the 11th step. And before I jump into the 11th step, I just want to tell everybody, it doesn't matter where you are in your progress. You might be trying to figure out the first step right now. And what I wanted to share with everybody is that the character of our higher power is the DNA of the steps, right? His character, the character of our power, is found through the entire progression. And I think that's really an important thing. So it doesn't matter if you're not in step 11, don't worry. We're gonna reach right back to the very beginning, and we're going to do a little bit of pathway on how we're being prepared for step 11 all the way along the line, and why it's such an important part of everything that we're doing along the way. It says we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understand Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out, which I think is a really powerful thing for us to take a look at, because it's telling us something about the character of God, our God, the God that we have chosen as our higher power. The one thing that I think is also really important with regard to this is don't get hung up on names, right? God knows his name, right? And he's, I mean, in Hebraic Christian traditions, I think we've got 58 names for God, right? And if you take a look at how those overlap into all sorts of different kinds of faith expressions, the one thing I'd really like to just do is release everybody right now to remember our higher power knows his name. So you let him bring you the confidence of the understanding of the name. And if we think about that right from the very beginning, what we're doing is we're coming into an early admission of our own powerlessness in order to try and get onto a road towards healing. And I think sometimes people feel really, really alone when they're going through that night or early morning of the broken soul, right? Where they're just at a place where they realize that everything is unmanageable. And I just want to make sure that we understand, because listen, everybody that's with us today, we have personal testimonies. We've listened to personal testimonies of people, and I have never met a single person in 4 decades of recovery that wound up at a meeting without a miracle, right? And so what it means is, in that place where we think that we're alone and we're struggling with the idea of powerlessness, that our higher power is already there, right? It's already there. And I remember for me, we're going to talk a little bit about music, but music was always really important to me. And I had a Scottish grandmother who always used to say to me, because I came from a family of overachievers, and I won't dig into that too deeply, but it was my grandma used to say to me all the time, do what brings joy to your heart and provision will follow, right? And I always loved music, and I always wanted to be around things that had to do with music. And that was the pathway that my higher power used. I wound up I wound up working. And by the way, I don't want to, there are probably people that like country music on this podcast. Let me just say that when I entered into a job relationship, still using drugs, right? And really struggling with it tremendously, not being able to sleep at night. And I wound up getting hired by a traditional country music station in northern Saskatchewan, right? And I remember driving up for the interview because they wanted an all night, like a shutdown guy that so your shift ended at 3 o'clock in the morning and then the station went automated. And I remember driving up thinking, oh, I have to remember the name of three country artists. Like, what in the interview they asked me to name three country artists? I'm like, oh, Willie Nelson, Dolly Parton, and that was it. I couldn't get a third. So, funny story too. On my first shift, I called Reba McEntire Reba McGinty, and it caused no end of problem. So anyway, but just in that sort of discussion about how our higher power meets us, I'm like down to 135 pounds. If I slept at night when it was dark, I would wake up with night terrors and I could feel like arms wrapped around me and paralyzed. And so, like any reasonable drug addict, I decided not to quit using drugs, but to stop sleeping when it was dark. It seemed like a really good idea to me. So, I've got my world a little bit turned upside down. And I'm going through this kind of really dark, dark period where the only thought that would bring me relief was the idea of committing suicide. Like ending everything was it was the hope of my life. Like that's when we start to know that there's something really, really wrong. And I would just like to say one of the greatest pieces of advice going through that corridor for me came from somebody in Narcotics Anonymous who said, Kirby, the great thing about committing suicide is you can always do it tomorrow, which I think was probably good advice. So anyway, I devised this incredible plan to end it all. And it was brilliant plan because I needed to stage it in a way so that it looked like an accident because my mom, who had survived a bitter divorce and had gone through all the things that she had gone through, really loved us and cared about us. And I thought, I didn't want to leave her with that legacy. I wanted her to think it was an accident. So I got everything set up and I went into the radio station to clean it up just to do my last shift, right? And make sure that I left, my workspace and everything in really cool condition. And so I switched the station over to automated at 3 o'clock in the morning. And at 3:02, I hear this message: tired, unable to sleep, contemplating suicide. If so, call Bob, and a phone number, right? I thought, wow, that's weird. I've never heard anything like that before. And then at 3:05, same message. And at 3:07, same message, because it's a traditional country station. Most of the songs were 2.5 minutes long. And it took me 3/4 of an hour to get out of the building. And by the time I got out of the building, I'd heard that message 15 times. It played between every song over and over and over again. And you know what I did at 3:47? I called Bob, right? And I found out later, Bob had had a resentment issue with regard to some people in AA and started a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I could have never gone to an AA meeting. I was too proud to go to an AA meeting, right? So Bob starts an NA meeting. NA World Service told me there had never been an NA meeting in that town up to the time within 4 weeks of when I made the phone call. And within 6 months of when I left that little town, there's never been a Narcotics Anonymous meeting there since. Bob went into the radio station and said, hey, we've got these PSAs and we'd really love for you to play them. And the program director thought it was yucky and didn't want to touch it. But after Bob kept pushing on him and pushing on him and pushing on him, he decided he was going to play every PSA on the night that I was going to go home and commit suicide, right? So whenever I'm looking for evidence, and we have to remember this in our lives, that we can feel injured and alone, but we know in our heart of hearts that we're not alone, right? That there really is something trying to bring us into a harbor, and that that love and that care that we've got in a higher power relationship is the most important relationship that we can ever have. It governs all the rest of our relationships. And through the step process, what we see is the DNA, the fingerprints of our higher power in every step. Like if we're powerless and we have to admit powerlessness, we're not admitting powerlessness into a vacuum. We're admitting powerlessness into something that has more power and more love than we understand, right? Because if we don't see that in some fragment, we can't get there, right? We can't get there without that extra ability to be able to hope again. But powerlessness is a kind of veiled hope, if that makes sense, right? That there might be a different way. And then we see when we come into the second step and the third step, we've got a higher power that's telling us that it has the ability to restore us, that it cares, right? Like that our higher power cares. When we start to do inventories, we're asked to do a fearless moral inventory. And the word fearless always jumped out at me because I was governed by fear. I was afraid of everything. I remember at the end, I was afraid to stay home because they'd fire me. I was afraid to go to work because they'd know what a mess I was, right? I was afraid to sleep in the dark. I was afraid of everything, right? And now I'm being asked to do a fearless moral inventory. Where does the courage come from? The courage has to come from our understanding, our new developed understanding of the character of our higher power. And I think some of us really get stuck in a place where we're trying to gain head knowledge about a relationship that is a vital, caring relationship, that is a person, right? For me, when I finally came to a place that the head knowledge wasn't going to help me to get better, but that personal relationship with a person, a persona, a character, somebody who knew me, loved me, cared about me, could forgive me, someone that had authority over darkness, someone that would guide me, direct me, help me if I could just be quiet and be still and learn how to be quiet and be still. Because what we're seeing in the steps is this build out of our understanding of the character of a higher power that restores, that cares, that's fearless, that forgives, that heals, that loves in restoration. Like when we go out to make amends, why are we going out to make amends, right? Why are we doing that? It's because our higher power loves, right? Loves people, doesn't want us to leave a trail of wreckage behind us, wants us to heal and seam up relationships based on love, right? When we talk about step 10, we're talking about this understanding that our higher power is constantly forgiving, right? This isn't like get in the club, gets, scrubbed up and start walking down the road and everything's going great. And then you make a mistake and you're, invalidated instantly because you make a mistake. No, it's not the character of our higher power. I think I'm a dad, and when my kids were learning how to walk and they fell down, I didn't run over to them and abuse them, for not being able to walk. I helped them stand up. I helped them learn how to walk. I was so proud that they were learning how to walk. And I think that's one thing we have to hang on to in a huge way is we're learning how to walk in a brand new way. And we've got a higher power that looks at us and says, man, I love that kid. I love that kid. Look at how hard that kid is trying to learn how to walk, right? So as we try and gain a new understanding of how to come into meditation, the practices of prayer, and the direction of step 11, there's something going on in the DNA of the steps all the way along the line that we can latch onto early, even in preparation for step 11. I'm not asking you to go do step 11 because I think, best outcomes are generally allowing these steps to unfold in the lineage that they've been laid out for us in, right? But what I am saying that's really important is we have to take every advantage in understanding the character of our higher power in a brand new way every day of our life. And that he's made pathways for it. And I'll give you a really interesting example because I'm going to talk about Ken M and the simple plan a little bit, just because of who Ken M is. Funny, Ken passed away this year after a long fight with ALS. And he passed away in the same anniversary date as Bill Wilson, which I thought was really interesting, right? But Ken was really incredibly focused on trying to help people to simplify the process of going through the steps. And he started working on shifts in our mind, right? That we deal with resentments, and really our shift is into forgiveness, or that we're afraid and we want to find courage, or that we're filled with self justification and we want to learn how to be accountable, or we judge people wherever. I mean, this was a big one for me. Wherever I went, I was like the king of judgment, right? I just judged. But what I was trying to do was find my way into acceptance, right? Because what's so interesting is when we're judging others, we're judging ourselves. Whatever harsh ruler we're lining up against somebody else is the same ruler that we're using to measure ourselves with, right? And Justin, you and I were talking before we kicked off about selfishness. You know, I remember when I did my fifth step, the person that I did it with circled selfishness on my character defects and said, Glenn, if we could make this go away, all the rest of them would disappear with us. But what's so interesting to me about it is we're talking about the analogy of uh, selfishness being attached to pain, right? We go through pain, and we talked about, hey, you hit your finger with a hammer, and all you can think about is, you know, your thumb, right? Oh, my thumb, right? It doesn't matter what's going on around you. Your whole world is focused on the pain. And I think was really cool for me was the day that I realized that if somebody was saying that I was selfish, they weren't actually attacking me. What they were doing was they were telling me, Glenn, your focus is inward, right? It's not outward. And I think that one of the things that we can do really early on in our recovery journey, and one of the things that I think the Simple Plan was really written for, was an opportunity for us to come out of self, right? And to start building bridges into a greater authority, an authority that restores, that cares, that's fearless, that forgives, that loves, that heals, that's long suffering with us, and just gentle and powerful, all in one embodiment, and something powerful enough to deal with the darkness that's trying to press in to battle with our lives. And in that understanding, the shift mindset that Ken came up with was really, really important to me. You know, we've written our own books and we've done our own stuff for years. And when I bumped into Ken and saw what he was doing with the Simple Plan about 12 years ago, I thought, wow, this guy's got an amazing voice, one of the kindest people I've ever met, and somebody that had really figured out a way to take the complication out of early and ongoing recovery. And so what we got tasked with was, as Ken's voice disappeared, because in the last year of his life, it was very, very difficult for him to talk, right? But he could write, and we could listen closely. And he kept writing and writing and writing. And just to give you an idea, the character of Ken M, when people would come to visit him in the hospital, he'd be trying to counsel them and help them when they were showing up believing that he was near the end of his life and in horrible pain. And all he was interested in was making sure that whoever visited him got the care and attention that they needed. I mean, right to the end, right? Like I I was so proud of Ken. I remain proud of him as a part of our fellowship. Anybody that's walking down this pathway, we're all brothers and sisters in this, right? And he is alumni that all of us can call a grandfather, you know, because he's a cool guy and just had some wonderful insights. So what they tasked us with was to save Ken's voice. We took everything that was written, everything that we had, and we started to create an avatar process that could encapsulate Ken so that Ken could still talk, right, when he was still with us. And then his brother, Jim, has just been awesome with regard to the project to help us to make sure that anything that the avatar is teaching from the basis of Ken's writing, Ken's thoughts, Ken's beliefs. It's been a really cool way to keep the legacy alive. Now, I'll tell you one other interesting story. When I first got asked to do this, I got woken up in the middle of the night. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning. Seems like 3 o'clock in the morning is a special time for me. And the lyrics to a song were in my head. And believe it or not, it was a country song. And so I was like, really? A country song? So anyway, I went down to the studio in the middle of the night. And by the time the sun rose the next morning, we had created the country English version of the Simple Plan. And I was reticent to share it for a few days, but I reached out to one of Ken's sponsees and said, "Hey, is it possible that Ken likes country music?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, he's like a huge country music fan. Like all he listens to is country music." And I thought, okay, I get it. I get it, right? Dad trying to make sure that his kid could hear his voice. Sorry, when it mattered the most. So he sees us, right? He sees the frailty of where we are. He knows what will help us and inspire us and bless us, even in the hardest moments. So Ken fell in love with the music, and the whole Simple Plan team fell in love with music, and it just started banging on me in a huge way that there was so many other expressions, right? Motown and rap and, Euro techno pop and so many languages, right? And we started doing research into language understanding as part of the 11th step, as part of how do we stop our minds from racing, right? Like, how do we get into a place where we can meditate, where we can pray, where we can be quiet, where we can quiet our minds, because our minds have gone through all of these years of difficulty and loss and suffering and abandonment and all the things that want to define who we are for the rest of our lives. And I'm here to tell you, you do not let anything on that side of the page define who you are, because that's not who you are. You're loved and cared for and special. You're a genius. You're brilliant. You've got a purpose. You've got this amazing pathway in front of you. And what we wanted to do is through the Simple Plan and the app, is we wanted to start opening up pathways for people to come into places of personal meditation and to understand in their heart of hearts that there was something more, that there was something bigger, that we were part of something larger that cares about us, and to get us out of selfishness, looking inward. The language versions of it are kind of neat. Justin, you and I were talking at the beginning. We rewrote the Simple Plan into Ukrainian, because of the war. We did a Hebrew version because of the war, right? We've done Swahili versions because of the drought. We've done Portuguese versions because of some of the issues that are going on in communities in Brazil. We did Hawaiian versions because, our brothers and sisters in Hawaii are struggling with some of the highest rates of recovery issues in the world per capita, right? So we found through a whole series of studies that have been done that when you listen to music that's written in a language that you don't understand, it moves your brain immediately out of processing front lobe mode into experience mode. And when your brain's in experience mode, what it's doing is it's starting us out in a new pathway to create a new synapse connection to start walking out of experience mode back into thinking, right? And by the way, this is one of the reasons that our higher power designed our minds the way that it is. Our minds aren't broken, guys. We had a broken life, and now that broken life can transform our minds into a greater power than we've ever known or seen before. So the music's been great at it. All you do to use the music or the meditation processes is just let go and experience and come into early meditation. And I think you'll find that it's a really good way to start working on step 11 and any of the steps that are urging us to understand the character of our higher power.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Rico 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform. Well, thank you so much, Glenn. I really, really enjoyed your share there, and I've got several questions. I've written almost a whole page of questions here for you based on your share. I want to remind our live audience, if you have a question for Glenn, please type it in the chat. If you don't want me to read your first name, if you want to remain completely anonymous, either direct message me or say anonymous, please, when you type that question in the chat. But we'll get to as many questions as we can over the next little bit as we move forward in this. Glenn, so my understanding of prayer and meditation of step 11 is prayer is me saying something, meditation is me listening. A lot of times I hear people talk about meditation as I'm going inward to make connection with myself. But as we've talked about here, the thought is we want to turn outward. Talk to me a little bit about how meditation actually helps turn you outward from your experience.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what's interesting is because our conscious minds, especially when we've been through a lot of trauma, are constantly establishing limitations on where we can go, what we can do, and how we can live. Okay. Because of past experiences, because of devastation and difficulty that we've experienced, we've got our mind saying, don't do that. Don't go here, stay there. You're afraid. You can't do that. You're not qualified, blah, 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 blah. Right. Whereas what's going on in meditation is that we're releasing a new authority to go outward that's not being governed anymore by a trail of wreckage, right? And I think the experiences of light and hope that happen in real meditation are an explosion forward, right? They redefine how we think, how we can move, what we trust in. They overcome fear. And that was a huge part for me. I remember just like one personal thing when I was early in recovery, I would lay between speakers on the floor, right? Trying to figure out how to sleep in the dark again, because I was afraid to sleep in the dark. I was always worried that if I fell asleep in the dark, that I would be killed, right? In the dark. This is, just to give you an idea where my mindset was at. And I would lay between the speakers and I would listen to Going to Carolina in my mind over and over and over again. And I realized something was shifting, right? I could think about going somewhere I'd never been before. Canadian kid from, northern Saskatchewan. Carolina was like, going to Antarctica. I didn't even know what it looked like. But the meditation process started painting new pictures for me about what was possible. It was making the room bigger and it was making the room smaller. And let me just give you 30 seconds on that. That's the serenity prayer, right? Like the room that I'm in right now is the size of the problem that I've got, right? Like if it's not within arm's length and I can change it, then I've got to let it go. And that's where the room gets bigger, right? So it's a cool balance, right? When you can start to feel, hey, I'm not overwhelmed. The problem isn't bigger than the space that I'm in. And the problem sure isn't bigger than the power that's going to deliver me from it. I hope that's a reasonable answer.
I love it. Yeah, very reasonable. And I love that imagery of the room. Thank you for sharing that. You talked about this 3 o'clock in the morning miracle. and all the things that happen there. You talked about the night terrors of not wanting to sleep when it's dark outside. And then you talked about the next 3 o'clock in the morning miracle with the song that came to your head. Talk to me, compare and contrast a little bit of addiction 3 a.m., where you were afraid to go to sleep, to recovery 3 a.m., where you're brought out of sleep into this really cool spiritual experience. How does that compare and contrast?
Well, I think it's interesting because I think one is if you know the expression about being painted into a corner, uh, right? 3 a.m. recovery was me literally being painted into a corner where there was only two choices left in life for me, right? I had two choices. And 3 a.m. in healing and with a higher power is the higher power waking us up and saying, hey, I've got a surprise for you. You can do this, right? This is something that is in you and something that I'm giving to you. And together, you have no idea how far this can go, right? So I think my best outcome at 3 a.m., heading into recovery was maybe I would wind up at a table somewhere where somebody could tell me to, I used harsh language with me because I showed up to my first meeting saying, hey, I know a lot about drugs. I can help you out. you know? And God bless Bob. He said, hey, sit down and shut up or F off. I mean, literally, right? And I thought, well, that's really rude. But you know what? I did sit down and I did shut up, But 3 a.m. now is there's a story to tell, right? Now we have a story to tell. That's a lot of fun.
That's so cool. Thank you for that. That PSA that came through, call Bob if this is your experience. What other call Bob experiences have you had throughout your life where something like that just kind of coincidentally happens? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one that was life changing for me, and like I said, we're not going to get hung up on names. God knows his name, so that's all cool. But when I got called into inner city ministry, no, like I had a huge struggle with, quote unquote church, small c church stuff, right? And I had like my higher power banging on me. I was like a tech CEO, right? And I didn't want to be an inner city pastor. And and by the way, this is funny because this is a 3 a.m. moment as well. But I'm literally in my living room in Phoenix and I'm screaming at the ceiling, like I'm arguing with God. I basically said, if you want me to be an inner city pastor, then you're going to have to come and knock on my door. And the next day in the afternoon, the head of one of the largest community churches in the United States came to my house in Litchfield Park and knocked on the door. And I got to tell you, I was devastated. I mean, like, I just speaking transparently, I didn't want to give up all of that stuff. I thought, hey, we're finally successful. Look at what we're doing. And now I'm going to put all this down and go into the inner city. But it really changed my life. And what was really neat in the follow up to that, and I'm going to talk about promises for a second. Our higher power has to bring promises along with it. Okay. Promises for our restoration, promises for our hope, promises that are indelible, promises that survive circumstances, right? So I'm at this conference, this church conference. I wake up in the middle of the night and I hear a voice, and the voice gives me three promises. And I was just blown away, blown away. And I had so much peace. I fell asleep. And in the morning when I woke up, I couldn't remember any of them. It's like, oh man, this was so cool. And so in my prayer meditation, what I knew was my higher power was saying to me, I knew you'd forget them before I gave them to you. So you walk, and I'm going to give all of them back to you one at a time so you can write them all down, not just for you, but for your family, right? And over the course of the next 6 months, I had three completely different individuals walk up to me and say, hey, I've got a higher power promise for you, right? So I always thought that was really cool.
Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Rico 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform. That is so cool. Thank you for sharing that. You know, as we talked beforehand and as you shared during your share here, Glenn, you talked about the power of hearing music in a different language than the language you understand. I've got a comment here from Michael, and then I'd like to dive just a little bit deeper. Michael says, just a statement, I love going to synagogue and listening to the familiar melodies that I've heard thousands of times. Being in Hebrew has me access something different than if it was in English. Talk to us a little bit more of that power and your experience with that.
Yeah, you bet. And just a small commercial message. We've got the Simple Plan written in Hebrew right now, which is kind of cool. So if from a follow-up standpoint, if anybody's got language expressions that really speak to them, I'd just love to share with the music, Justin, and that would be great. But see, what's interesting is in the tests that they've done, they understand what's going on when we hear something that's familiar and warm, right? And is connected to our DNA somehow, right? So the largest expressions that we get to move us into meditation and prayer modes come from things that are connected to our DNA somehow. I'm come from a really strong Celt background, Scottish Irish, and which I will tell that joke later. But the thing that's really cool for me is whenever I heard anything that had a Celt vibe to it or bagpipes or whatever, it would stir me in the most amazing way, right? So I started digging into this Gaelic translation versions of the Simple Plan set into the language of Robbie Burns, right? Like that's so we got like a Euro inner city Dublin rap mash with Robert Burns language for the Simple Plan that ends in Gaelic. Outside of that, there's nothing unusual going on. But what happens with regard to it is it reaches, if you come from that universe, right, it reaches you in a deeper place of meditation and insights than anything else can, right? So we've been so encouraged in relationship to this. And, you know, we did the Simple Plan World, which I think has got 16 construct languages in it. German, Russian, Ukrainian, Hebrew, Plains Cree, Swahili, Farsi, right? It's so cool because all the languages take one section of the music, but they're all basically saying, God is watching over me. That's my simple plan, right? When I'm tired, I will find rest. When I'm angry, peace will reign, right? I think when I'm afraid, your love surrounds me, right? Everything in it, no matter what language it's written in, it's all written to a shift that basically says, no matter what, God's watching over me. I have a higher power and he cares and he's watching over me. Hey, so yeah, I say from a Hebrew perspective, I can listen to Hebrew all day long. I just think it's the coolest reach. And by the way, the person that answered the question, there's a very cool DNA link there for them to enter into a different kind of experience.
That's cool. And I want to get to the DNA of prayer and that DNA link there in just a minute. But I got a question from our live audience first that I think is really important that I would love to hear your take on, Glenn. This is from Cheryl. Cheryl says, for those you help who struggle to see God's will in all things, how do you help them see with spiritual eyes to see, oh, that's God getting my attention, or that's God talking to me? How do you differentiate and see that?
Yeah, that's a really, really important question, and I'm going to answer it with an answer that we started to use around tables and to myself, right, and then to our kids, because what I used to tell people and still try to tell people, and I'm telling them right now, is that we've got three voices in our head. Okay, we're talking to ourselves. We have soulish emotion. And our soulish emotion has one primary responsibility, that's to protect us. Okay. So don't do that. Don't go here. This is going to be a disaster. You're not qualified. You screwed this up last time. Stay at home. Don't go outside. That the soulish emotion voice is generally the loudest voice in our head. Okay. But it's got a texture to it. And the texture is selfishness. Okay. So if we've got an understanding of the texture of our soulish emotion, and we then understand the texture of the enemy, and I'm going to just let's just toss it all out right now. Because any of us that have gone through the darkness of recovery, and by the way, one of my favorite stories of all time, I'm in inner city ministry and I meet this young kid who's in an arc, like a Salvation Army, right? And he's doing power of brokenness. And he actually wound up there to avoid being found by the authorities because he was part of a satanic cult that did blood rituals over crystal methamphetamine and distributed them into the inner city, right? So this this kid makes a decision to get his higher power with me that night, right? He's got like the demonic ring and the book of spells and all the rest of that stuff, which we dispatched. And we can talk about that, some other time. But it was really cool do you know why I really loved him so much? Is because he understood there was another force, right? He'd been in it. Like he was in the army of the enemy. He understood the texture of the language of the enemy. And one of the things we want to sort through is we want to understand, listen, the enemy can try and impersonate our soulish emotion. The enemy can try and impersonate our higher power. But I'll tell you one thing he can't do, and that's remain humble. He cannot spend more than 15 seconds trying to talk to us about anything without accusing us of something. Okay. Because he's the accuser, right? And we come to understand the textures of these voices, whereas the texture of the voice of our higher power, the whisper. And by the way, we just wrote a song called "The Whisper Breaks the Bone," which I'm really pumped about. The whisper of our higher power has the authority to crush all the rest of these things, right? To crush the accusations of the enemy, to crush our own soulish emotion. So, guys, what we want to focus on is texture. We want to understand the smooth, loving, prompting texture of our higher power, loves us, cares about us unconditionally, forgives us, leads us, guides us, directs us. There's no ambiguity whatsoever when we start to hear a protective voice. It's not our higher power. When we start to hear an accusation voice, it's not our higher power. Does that make sense?
Hey, Rico 12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Rico 12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at rico12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Rico 12 Spearhead. Yeah, it does. It makes a lot of sense. And man, I look forward to hearing "The Whisper Breaks the Bone." That title in and of itself just hit me to the core. So really cool. Thank you for sharing that. One of the first things you shared when we started recording is something that I wrote down, and I just want to hear your take deeper on this. You talked about the long arm of the past, and how long do I have to be beyond the past before that long arm can reach me. Dive just a little bit deeper on that concept. I think it's a powerful concept to hear.
Yeah, in early recovery, like I was on staff at a radio station as a drug addict. But the moment that it became known that I was in Narcotics Anonymous, I was fired. It was okay if I was an addict, but it wasn't okay if I was in Narcotics Anonymous. So, I get turfed out of my first job. My mom's on the phone with me. Hey, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm starting a new life, right? I'm starting a new life. I'm starting a new life. I'm starting a new life. So within a couple of weeks, I got hired by a brand new station. I drove to the station and talk about, your higher power getting you prepared for something. I walked in and it was a better shift, right? It wasn't, going to be up all night. It was going to be a drive shift, and that was like a big step. And so I walked in, and the receptionist there said, "Hey, I'm Glen, and I'm, here for the new job." And I looked at her and I said, "It'll be the shortest career in radio history." Right? I didn't know why I said it. So I walk into the program director's office, and he said, "I never hired you. I don't know who you are. And if you try and come after us with regard to it, then I'm going to deny ever having given you an offer." And by the way, I'd taken my last $250 in the world to rent the U-Haul and put my stuff in it and drive into this new town. So here I am in this new town. I'm thinking, oh God, I've got to phone my mom and say, "Mom, I need to borrow money to get home," right? And I remember at that point in time, see, what happened was the owner of the previous radio station had called the new radio station to say, "Guy's bad apple, he's a drug addict, and he'll screw with your staff," right? So I remember going home and just thinking, here I am, God, I'm trying to live a new life, and I'm trying to break free from all of this. And all it wants to do is chase me and chase me and chase me. And my higher power put a cool image into my mind. Okay. And I'm just going to share this out because it comes from my tradition. But he showed me a picture of the Red Sea. And the Red Sea is an obstacle that we can't get through, right? And we've got these chariots of an army that's more mechanized and has more armor and more ability to wipe us off the face of the earth than we can defend ourselves with a bunch of bulls and shovels, right? We can't defend ourselves. And then the Red Sea opens up. And part of the focus is really interesting in this is you do not go through that Red Sea moment unless there's an army chasing you, right? See, I know, and maybe there's somebody else on this that would say, "No, I'd go through just out of curiosity." I just don't think, unless there's something from your past trying to enslave you, that sometimes we have the personal courage to go through an opening in order to come into a place of new freedom. And we know how that story turns out for what's pursuing the kids, right? They get to the other side, and when the army's in the middle of it, the Red Sea collapses on what's destroying it. So the image about the long arm of the past has changed for me completely over the years. Now, whenever I get that feeling, I think I'm about to see an opening that is going to crush something behind me forever. You know, the higher power in that story basically says to the kids, "You will never have to look upon their faces again." Right? Yeah. So, man, I think we got to start looking at this in a different way. Our higher power has so much power. Nothing that we're facing hasn't already been through his scrutiny and isn't moving us forward to something greater for us, something greater for our kids, for our family, for something greater, right? There's just something greater. And that's where getting selfishness out of the way has to really become an important part of our lives.
Love the imagery. Thank you, Glenn. All right. I think this will be one of the last questions here, but let's get into this. So, one thing that you talked about, and I said I wanted to get back to this, is the DNA. You said, in this DNA of music and the DNA of prayer, you reference those things. Talk to me a little bit about what you mean by that and what that means to you.
Yeah, and two answers in relationship to that. And one is, again, a promise that comes along with my higher power, and that is that the mistakes of our ancestors can visit us to the third or fourth generation. but righteousness to 1,000 generations, which basically means if there's something in my lineage and DNA, it stretches back into the past so far that I can't even imagine. And that authority is coming forward with me. And it explains to me why somebody who was born in Florida, right? Who has never spoken a word of Portuguese, but has grandparents that were from Rio, listens to the music that we've created in Portuguese and breaks down and cries, even though they can't understand a word. There's something in the DNA about lifting them into the promise of righteousness from 1,000 generations, right? Scientists have tried to figure out, you know, they're believing right now that there's actually language-based DNA in the human anatomy, right? So that as it's passed down generation to generation to generation to generation, that there's actually wiring. Listen, I love the scientific explanation. It's great, but it's more than that, right? Because, we're not just physical, we're spirit. And I think there's something going on in the spirit. And also, listen, the DNA of prayer, I think, is really, really important because you're wired to be you, right? You've got people trying to tell you how to pray. No, pray like this, pray like this, pray like this, right? And there's some great direction in Judeo-Christian frameworks, Muslim frameworks, Buddhist frameworks, whatever, with regard to prayer. But most of them leave out one important part, and that is, do you need somebody to tell you how to talk to your dad who loves you? Okay. And by the way, I didn't have a dad who loved me. I had a dad who mostly despised me, which, was part of my struggle with regard to coming into a higher power understanding, right? But what happened was I started realizing I had a dad who loved me and that he wanted to talk to me the way that he talks to his kids, and that he wanted me to talk to him the way that I would talk to a dad who cared about me a ton. So I could say, thank you, I made it through today. I just made it through today. That was when I started, that was my prayer life, right? I'd lay down in bed, I'd put one hand over my head, and I'd just say, thank you, thank you. I didn't even have a name, right? Thank you, thank you. I made it through today. I made it through today, right? And that's how my prayer language started. I want to just dig a little bit deeper into this for 1 second, because especially for people that have kids or have been kids, that's probably all of us. Okay. So what happens is we're wired in a specific way, right? And we start to recognize in our kids how they wake up, right? I had a daughter who basically what I had to do is go in and kiss her on her head, open up her curtain and say, baby girl, I love you. When it's time to get up, it's time to get up. Homeschool, right? So, and because that's the way that she needed to wake up. She needed the light. She needed the time. She needed to process. She needed to do in her own way because that's who she is. Like, and that's who that kid is. Or another kid who is like, James, our firstborn, is just like, boom, up, make the bed, get it going on. Hey, dad, conversation, the whole 9 yards. That's who he was, right? And we've got siblings and we understand the differences in our nature, but don't let anybody steal who you are from your relationship with the higher power that made you who you are, right? I think that's really, really a super important thing. We're just having conversations with a dad who loves us, right?
Beautiful and beautiful words of wisdom. Thank you so much, Glenn. This was amazing. Do you have any final wrap up thoughts before we wrap this thing up?
Well, I just grateful for the community, Justin, and what you guys are doing. And, we see ourselves really as a resource. There was a legacy foundation that was set up called Misty, the Misty Foundation, that was set up by a philanthropist who has a really long 12-step background, but lost his daughter to addiction and just wanted to make sure that Ken's voice could keep going forward and to work with us to make sure that we could have resources that were free, like always free. That's what Ken wanted, just freely given, freely give, right? And so I just like to encourage anybody, if we can be a blessing in any way with regard to music, meditation, steps, Ken's encouragement, whatever it is, just grab a hold of it, guys. It's free, and take what works for you and leave the rest behind, right?
Yeah, and I put some links in the chat here. They'll be in the show notes of the podcast to the simple plan and everything you've got going on with that. I assume they'll be able to find answers to all of these different questions there at the simpleplan.app. Correct?
Amen. Yeah, 100%.
Yes. Awesome. So go check those things out. And if you'd like to get in contact with Glen, well, I guess let me ask you this. Are you okay if they email me and I refer them to you?
100%, guys. Absolutely. Awesome. Anybody that needs anything, that's what we're here for.
Yeah, so send an email to rico12pod@gmail.com if you would like to be connected with Glen, and I will happily get you guys connected. All right, come back next Saturday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 Eastern, 6:30 UK time as we continue this Rico 12 speaker meeting. Tim C., who is another first-time Rico 12 speaker, will be our guest speaker, and his topic is entitled From Fantasy and Avoidance to Connection and Intimacy. And grateful and excited to hear from him at that point. We are continuing to search for speakers for the future. I have several lined up over the next couple of months, but this project continues into perpetuity as far as I know. So if any of you out there is your higher powers nudging you and saying, hey, this is a topic I want you to speak on, reach out to me. We'll get it lined up. All right, Glen, you're going to close us out with this prayer, and I'm looking forward to hear it.
Amen. Yeah, no, we just want to come to you with gratitude in our hearts and just say, God, thank you for bringing us into a new season, a new day, a new hope, for helping us, for restoring us, for giving us new pathways to walk down, and for meeting us. You know, we want so badly, Lord, especially for anybody that's with us today that's struggling with higher power and struggling with all of these different voices and names and ideas and religious thoughts. And we want them to be set free. And there's no greater force in all of the universe who loves freedom more than you do. It's for freedom's sake that you set us free. And so we're just going to speak the blessing over everyone that hears this podcast and this message, that you share your name and your character with them, and remind them that they are the apple of your eye, that you love them, see them, guide them, direct them, care for them. Lord, bless them. Just bless them, and bless Justin and the work of this community. Let it grow and let it prosper in your sight. We just pray all of this in the power that you've given us. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, Glen. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back. And when you do, stay. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
אני צריך תוכנית פשוטה באולם מתקשר. הלב שלי עייף מנפילות צעקות. קסקל משלמדתי זיך לרוץ. הגיע הזמן לעמוד בצורה פשוטה. קששים הם יותר ממה שאני ישול לשעת. יש לי מקום שלב, אני ישול לפנות. כשאני עייף, הם צמנו. כשאני כוס, השלום ישלות. כשלהישאר כוח, מצאו את אמונתי. יש לי תוכנית פשוטה, להושיט יד אל ישוע, ובמקום הזה אשתחרר. התשיעים זורקים עליי את כלמשי שלהם. אני רוצה להסתתר בדבר שהורגו אותי. המשפט שלי מצב שבי ניצ'ון. באיזשהו אופן מוצאת את הכוך להנהיג. הכוך הזה מגיע מלמעלה. הוא פשוט לבטוחי כשהתשיעים הם יותר ממה שאני ישול לשבת. יש לי מקום שלב, אני אשול לפנות כשאני עייף, אמצע מנוע, כשאני כוס, השלום שולט עליי, כשעלי של כוח, למצוא את אמונתי, יש לי תוכנית פשוטה, למצוא את דרכי, ובמקום הזה הים הזאת השינם, זוהי תוכנית פשוטה, אבל היא עובדת בשבילי, זוהי רקע תוכנית הפשוטה שלי, אבל אלוהים שומר עליי, אלוהים שומר עליי, זאת התוכנית הפשוטה שלי. כשאני עייף, אמצע מנוע, כשפג'דו כסבי, אהבתש מצילה אותי, כשאני אתה שומר על ליבי, זאת התוכנית הפשוטה שלי.